Emily sat alone in the corner of an upscale restaurant in Boston, a place she had carefully chosen for her birthday celebration. The table was set with elegant plates, gleaming wine glasses catching the light, but something was missing. Not the food, not the music, not even the decor. What was missing was her family. Her parents hadn't shown up, neither had her brother. The empty chair across from her stared back cold and accusing. She had waited and waited, but no one came. Her phone vibrated, breaking the silence. Another message, but not from her family. It was from her business partner congratulating her on a milestone. The success she'd worked for, the late nights, the deals she'd closed, all acknowledged, just not by the people who should have cared the most. Emily glanced at the empty chairs around her, noticing the awkward silence that had started to settle in. Her friends, Sarah in particular, tried their best to make the evening enjoyable, but their attempts were a fragile mask over the growing emptiness in Emily's heart. "You look great tonight," Sarah said, offering her a smile, but it wasn't enough. The moment felt incomplete. Emily forced a smile, feeling the weight of years of disappointment. Her family had never truly seen her for who she was. Growing up, her achievements, whether in academics, art, or business, were always overshadowed by her brother's success. Logan was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Emily had tried so hard for so long to get even the smallest recognition. But all her efforts were ignored, like an afterthought. She looked at the cake in front of her, unlit candles, untouched frosting. This should have been a moment of celebration. A moment where for once her success was acknowledged, and she could finally feel valued. But here she was, surrounded by friends, yet feeling more isolated than ever. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an alert from social media, a picture of her brother at a family event, her parents smiling proudly beside him. The message was clear: they were happy without her. Emily exhaled deeply. The pain wasn't new. But tonight, in this moment, it felt sharper. Her family had always used her, valued her only when she could give them something. The moments when she was proud of herself, the times she worked hard for her goals, it never mattered to them. They didn't show up to her art exhibitions or her academic awards, yet they were always there when it meant something for them. She looked at the empty chair again. The truth was staring her in the face. She could achieve all the success in the world, but without the people who should have supported her, it felt meaningless. Tonight, Emily realized something she had been avoiding for years. She didn't need them. She didn't need their validation. She had built everything on her own, and she was done trying to prove herself to people who would never truly see her. She stood up from the table, taking a deep breath, her decision final. As she moved toward the window, her phone buzzed once more. Another congratulatory message. But this time, Emily didn't feel the need to check it. Her family had never cared about the milestones she achieved, and now she was done waiting for them to notice her. Have you ever felt like Emily when you give everything but still feel invisible to those who should care the most? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your experiences. A few days after her birthday, Emily found herself standing in a luxury car dealership staring at a Ferrari. It was the car she had always dreamed of, a sleek red masterpiece worth $350,000. For years, it had been nothing more than a fantasy, a symbol of a life she aspired to. But now, standing there with the keys in her hand, she felt something more. This wasn't just about owning a luxury car. It was about proving something to herself. Emily had always worked hard, but somehow, no matter how much she achieved, it never felt like enough for her family. Her mother, Elaine, and her father had always dismissed her accomplishments, showing far more enthusiasm for her brother Logan's every move. No matter what Emily did, it seemed like she was always in the background, chasing approval that never came. This Ferrari, however, was her own achievement, something she had done without anyone's help. And in that moment, as she slid into the driver's seat, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. The roar of the engine as she drove out of the dealership felt almost symbolic. This car was hers, and with it, she realized that her success didn't depend on anyone else's recognition. She didn't need to prove anything to her family. She had built this life on her own terms, and the Ferrari was the symbol of that independence. That night, after the excitement had settled, Emily posted a picture of her new car on Facebook. The caption was simple, but powerful: "Dreams realized." The message was clear: not to boast, but to acknowledge that this was something she had worked for and she was proud of it. Within minutes, the notifications began to flood in. Friends, colleagues, acquaintances, everyone was congratulating her. Each message of support added to her growing sense of accomplishment, but as she scrolled, one message stood out: Elaine. Her mother's message was short, but direct. "We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow." The words hit Emily like a cold splash of water. She paused, staring at the screen, trying to process. It had been years since her family had asked to meet with her, especially her mother. The last few years had been nothing but silence from them, and now, out of nowhere, her mother was asking for a family meeting. Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She couldn't help but wonder, was it because of the Ferrari? It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Her family had never shown any interest in her unless it benefited them. It was as if the only thing that truly mattered to them was what she could provide. When her achievements helped them in some way, they paid attention. But when she needed them, when she wanted to feel seen and heard, they were nowhere to be found. The message from Elaine only confirmed it. This meeting wasn't about reconnecting with Emily as a person, it was about the car, the success, the material value. Emily felt a mix of anger and disappointment, but more than that, she felt relief. She had long suspected that her family's attention had always been conditional, and now it was crystal clear. The Ferrari wasn't just a symbol of her success, it was a line in the sand. She no longer needed their approval, their love, or their validation. She had everything she needed within herself. She sat back on her couch, her phone resting in her hands, and glanced at the sleek car parked outside, visible from her window. The car wasn't just a status symbol, it was a reminder. It was a testament to the fact that she had done this on her own. No one had been there to help her. But now she didn't need anyone. And that realization, as empowering as it was, also came with a sense of finality. The decision was made. Tomorrow's meeting would not be about negotiating or making peace. It would be about setting boundaries. She wasn't going to be manipulated any longer. She wasn't going to sit in the background of her own life hoping for approval. If her family wanted something from her, they would have to show her they cared not just about her success, but about her. Emily grabbed her phone and texted Sarah, "I bought the Ferrari." The response came quickly. "No way. That's amazing, Em. You deserve it." It felt good to hear Sarah's support. Unlike her family, Sarah was always there for her, celebrating her achievements without asking for anything in return. It was moments like these that reminded Emily of what really mattered. She didn't need her family to prove her worth. Tomorrow's meeting. It was time to finally face them and put her foot down. Do you think success should be enough to earn respect? Or do you need to prove something to people who don't see you for who you really are? Share your thoughts below. The next morning, Emily's phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother, Elaine. "We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow." For a moment, Emily stared at the message, her fingers frozen on the screen. It had been years since her family had reached out to her like this. The suddenness of it all, especially after her Ferrari purchase, made her suspect that the meeting had nothing to do with family bonding. She couldn't shake the feeling that for once, the message was about something more, something familiar. Her family had always seen her as a resource. When she was younger, she tried so hard to gain their approval, thinking it would come from her achievements. But every success she had seemed to fade into the background. Her brother Logan had always been the one who was celebrated, the one her parents pinned their hopes on. Emily had been their silent backup plan, a backup that came with an endless supply of support, but only when they needed it. The Ferrari, the very thing that symbolized everything she had built on her own, had caught their attention. And now she was being asked to come home to fix something. Something wasn't right. The following evening, Emily arrived at the house she had grown up in. Walking through the front door felt different now, like she was stepping into a place where she no longer belonged. It wasn't a warm welcome, but a cold, calculated formality. Richard, her father, barely acknowledged her standing by the doorway, his face unreadable. Elaine was already sitting at the dining table, hands folded in front of her, her face a picture of concern that Emily didn't buy for a second. And then there was Chris sitting off to the side, his expression distant and guarded. "Thanks for coming, Emily," Elaine said, her voice tight. There was no warmth, no hint of affection. She could feel the underlying tension. Something was off. Richard, standing awkwardly by the door, didn't waste any time. "We need to discuss something important," he said, his tone surprisingly flat for a man who usually prided himself on being the head of the household. "We're in trouble." Emily's stomach twisted. She'd known this moment was coming, though part of her had hoped it wouldn't. She had hoped that they had finally learned to see her as more than just someone to rely on when they were struggling. But the message was clear now. They wanted her help. Elaine leaned forward, her gaze not quite meeting Emily's. "We've been dealing with some financial difficulties," she continued. "And well, we need you. We need your help." Emily's chest tightened. It was the same old story. The family dynamic that had always been rooted in expectation, not love. Her success had never been about her in their eyes. It was always about what she could do for them. The Ferrari she had bought, a symbol of her years of hard work, had suddenly become a beacon to them. Now they were here, expecting her to fix their problems as if she were a bank account that could simply be tapped. Chris, her older brother, chimed in. "You've made it big, Emily. You've got the car, the business. You've got everything we've never had. We need your help now." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Emily had been working tirelessly, pouring her heart and soul into her business, into building a future she could finally be proud of. But now it seemed like her hard work didn't matter to them. She wasn't their daughter. She was their bailout plan. Her father's face reddened with frustration. "It's not just about the money, Emily. It's about family. We've always been there for you. Now it's your turn to help us." Emily stared at her father, trying to process the words. They had never truly been there for her. Where were they when she celebrated her first big win, or when she finally made the decision to go all in on her business? She had been invisible to them for so long. They never once showed up for her when she needed them. But now here they were with their hands out, expecting her to drop everything for them. The anger that had been building inside her began to surface. She couldn't hold it in anymore. "You've never been there for me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You've only cared about what I could do for you. And now, when I've finally done something for myself, you think it's okay to come to me for help." The words hit like a slap. Elaine's face fell and Richard's jaw clenched. Chris shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emily could see the disappointment on their faces, but it didn't faze her. She had spent too long hoping for their recognition, for their approval. She wasn't going to beg for it anymore. "You never cared about me," Emily continued, her voice rising. "You've always treated me like a resource. I've given everything and you've taken it. But I'm done. I'm not going to fix your problems. Not this time." There was a long pause and Emily stood up, her heart pounding. She wasn't going to wait for them to explain or apologize. This was her decision. She had made it. "You can't just leave us like this," Chris shouted, standing up in frustration. "I'm not leaving you," Emily said, her tone steady. "I'm just finally seeing the truth. You don't care about me. You only care about what I can give you. I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself to you, but I won't do it anymore." She turned and walked toward the door, not looking back. The room behind her was filled with silence, the kind of silence that followed a realization, a shift. Emily had made her choice. She wasn't going to be the person who always stepped in when things went wrong. She had her own life to live now, and it was time to let go of the past. As she stepped outside into the cool air, the weight she had carried for so long felt lighter. For the first time, she was free. What do you think about Emily's decision to walk away from her family's demands? Do you think she's right to set boundaries? Or is family supposed to come first? No matter what. Share your thoughts below. Emily sat at her desk, the soft hum of the city outside her window barely noticeable. She had spent the last few weeks in a whirlwind of planning paperwork and research, trying to bring her dream to life. The idea of starting a foundation, something that could help women who were struggling like she had once struggled, had begun to feel like the one true path she could follow. And more than anything, it felt like the right time. The decision to step away from her family to break free from their constant demands had been one of the hardest of her life. But it had also been the most liberating. No longer burdened by their expectations, Emily was beginning to realize that this was the life she had always been meant to lead, not one shaped by others, but one that reflected her own values. She had worked so hard for this, and it was time to invest in something that would make a lasting impact. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Sarah. Let's meet. I think you're ready. Emily smiled. Sarah had been there for her through thick and thin. She had always believed in Emily when no one else did. Without Sarah's unwavering support, this moment would have felt a lot less certain. Later that day, the two women met at their favorite cafe, a quiet corner spot where they could talk without interruption. Emily couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude as she looked at Sarah. It wasn't just about the foundation. It was about the fact that she had someone who genuinely cared about her. I'm doing it, Emily said, her voice steady with a mix of excitement and resolve. I'm starting the foundation. It's for young women who need support, real support. Not just financial help, but guidance, mentorship. I want to help them see that they can create their own futures. Sarah's eyes sparkled with pride. That's amazing, Emily. You've got so much to offer, and I know this foundation will make a difference. You've been given so much, and now you're giving it back. This is what you were meant to do. Emily's heart swelled with warmth. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. She wasn't just following in someone else's footsteps, or trying to live up to other people's expectations. This was her vision, and she was going to make it happen. As the weeks passed, Emily's commitment to the foundation deepened. She met with lawyers to set up the nonprofit, worked with designers to create a website, and researched programs that could provide real opportunities for women. It wasn't just about money. It was about showing these women that they had the power to change their lives. There were nights when she stayed up late going over spreadsheets and plans, making sure everything was in place. But she didn't mind the work. It felt purposeful. For once, she was doing something just for herself and for others who needed her help. She no longer had to seek approval or feel guilty for prioritizing her own dreams. One evening, as Emily sat at her desk reviewing the final drafts of the foundation's materials, Sarah arrived with a package in hand. I thought you might like this, she said, handing it over with a grin. Emily opened the package to find a small silver key on a delicate chain. It's a key to the future, Sarah said, her voice filled with meaning. It symbolizes all the doors you've opened for yourself and all the ones you're about to unlock for others. A lump formed in Emily's throat as she held the key, the weight of it feeling significant. She had unlocked her own future, and now she was about to unlock the future for so many others. This wasn't just about a business or a charity. It was about creating a legacy, one that would continue long after her own journey. As Emily slipped the necklace on, a feeling of peace washed over her. She was on the right path. For the first time in her life, she was free from the chains of family expectations. The foundation wasn't just about giving, it was about living authentically and sharing that authenticity with the world. The next few months flew by. Emily's foundation began to take shape, and soon enough it was open for applications. She had partnered with local organizations and business leaders, each one eager to help young women find their voice. The response was overwhelming. Applications poured in from across the country from women who had faced tremendous challenges but were ready to rise above them. Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment every time she read one of their stories. These women reminded her of herself, strong, resilient, but in need of someone to believe in them. It was her chance to be that person, the one who had been missing from her own life for so long. One afternoon, Sarah stopped by Emily's office to check in. Emily looked up from her desk, her face lit up with a genuine smile. "You've done it," Sarah said, looking around at the bustling office, the team members working on different projects, the stack of applications on Emily's desk. "You've made it happen. I couldn't have done it without you." Emily replied, her voice full of gratitude. "You were the first person who ever believed in me." As Sarah sat down next to her, Emily realized that this was the beginning of something incredible. She wasn't just building a foundation, she was creating a movement where women could come together, support one another, and rise above the struggles they faced. And she was at the heart of it, finally living a life that was true to who she was not, who others wanted her to be. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to break free from expectations to live your true purpose? What do you think about Emily's decision to start her foundation? Share your thoughts below. Emily stood in her office looking out at the bustling activity around her. The foundation was thriving. She had done it. What had started as a personal journey, a leap toward freedom and self-worth, had now blossomed into something much bigger. Her organization was changing lives. Every day, women from all walks of life reached out, sharing their stories of struggle, strength, and hope. Emily had become the symbol of what was possible when someone chose to build their own future free from the constraints of others' expectations. The weight of her past was beginning to feel lighter, though the phone calls from her family kept coming. They hadn't stopped reaching out. Her mother, Elaine, sent messages, each one more desperate than the last, asking for her help. "We're still family, Emily. Please, we need you," Elaine had said in one of the most recent texts. Richard, her father, had called twice in the last week, his voice always carrying the same mix of guilt and entitlement. They hadn't changed, they still saw Emily as their personal resource, their safety net. At first, Emily had struggled with the guilt. They were her family, after all. But as the weeks passed, the guilt faded, replaced by a quiet, unshakable certainty. She had worked so hard to carve out a life that was hers, not one defined by family obligations or emotional manipulation. The foundation she was building was her legacy, a legacy not for her family's approval, but for the people who needed help. Her worth, she had come to realize, was no longer tied to what others thought of her. One afternoon, Emily sat down to go through the latest intake applications for the foundation. As she read through the heartfelt letters from women who had turned to her for support, a sense of pride swelled in her chest. There was so much she had to offer, so much more than her family had ever seen. These women were grateful not for money, but for the chance to change their lives, to access the opportunities they had been denied. Just as she set the last application aside, her phone buzzed. Another message from her mother. Emily hesitated before reading it. The words were familiar, but the tone was different this time. "Emily, please. We're all struggling. I know you've been successful. Your father's retirement fund is running low. We don't want to lose everything. I'm asking as a mother." Emily read the message again. She knew what this was. It wasn't a call for connection. It was a plea for her to save them. She felt the familiar pang of frustration, the old guilt creeping back in. But then she took a deep breath, letting it go. This wasn't her responsibility anymore. They had never been there when she needed them. Why should she feel obligated now? She put the phone down and turned back to the documents in front of her, a quiet sense of resolve settling over her. She didn't need to answer her mother. She didn't need to explain herself again. The value of her work, the lives she was impacting through her foundation, was worth far more than any approval or validation she would ever receive from her family. Emily had learned the hardest lesson of all, that her value didn't come from her family's acknowledgement. It came from what she had built with her own hands and from the respect and gratitude of the people she was truly helping. She didn't need them to validate her anymore. She had found her worth on her own terms. Weeks later, Emily sat in a meeting with the board of the foundation, reviewing the most recent success stories. They had provided scholarships to several young women, helping them pursue their education and careers. It was in those stories that Emily saw her own reflection. Every woman who found success through the foundation, every life that was changed, reminded her of her own transformation. These were the moments that mattered. These were the achievements that defined her. The foundation had grown to a point where it was no longer just about Emily, it was about the community she had helped create. A community of women who were no longer afraid to speak up, to fight for what they deserved, and to believe in themselves. It was the movement she had always dreamed of, a place where women could rise above the challenges that life had thrown at them and step into their power. One evening, as Emily reflected on how far she had come, she received a message from Sarah, her closest friend and unwavering supporter. "You did it, Em. You've made a real difference. I'm so proud of you." Those words, simple but powerful, meant more than any message from her family ever could. Sarah had been there every step of the way, through the doubts and the struggles, never asking for anything in return. It was Sarah's belief in her that had made Emily's success possible, and now together, they were watching something incredible unfold. Emily stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline, a quiet smile on her face. The foundation was more than just a charity, it was a symbol of everything she had worked for. It was proof that she had created something meaningful, something that wasn't dependent on the approval of those who had never truly understood her. And for the first time, Emily understood that her journey was just beginning. There was so much more to do, so many more women to help, so many more lives to change. She had learned that true fulfillment didn't come from pleasing others, but from living a life that was true to herself. She had unlocked the power of her own potential, and now she was ready to unlock the potential in others. Have you ever had to choose between your family's expectations and your own happiness? How did you navigate that decision? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.